So, all right, so we're with Jeff Sobol today. Jeff is a strength and conditioning coach at Akron University. He's a former Division One athlete, played professional sports for a little while, functioned as a trainer, and then moved into the coaching space from a collegiate strength and conditioning standpoint. So, Jeff, your background, like, walk us through that timeline. So, for people that are out there listening that think they want to get into training, think they want to get into coaching, like strength and conditioning coach at the collegiate level, what was your background?
Uh, so my path is pretty unconventional when it comes to and everybody's path nowadays. But my background's always been in athletics all through high school, and my dad was a coach. My both my parents were athletes in college. It was just kind of when it came to sports when I was little, the answer was always yes. Can we do this? Yes. Can we do this? Yes. Can we do this? Yes. And we kind of got to pick and choose what we ended up liking and having passion for, and continuing to do that. So all through high school, I was a three-time All-State football player. So I got a full ride to the University of Illinois out of high school
For
uh,
football?
for football. Yeah. And so I went there. I was there for 2 years. Ended up transferring to Eastern Illinois. Played my last 3 years of eligibility there. Had a great career.
Well, let's talk about the U of I. Why leave U of I? Because I think
Uh,
that's an interesting story in and of itself.
yeah, I agree, especially with the landscape nowadays with the transfer portal and all and how transferring is nowadays. It's just one of those things. I got recruited by a coach that ended up getting fired after the first year. So it's just kind of politics, and the next coach that comes in usually wants to bring their own recruits in, and you kind of get buried on depth charts and things like that. And um, it was just the best decision for me to leave and go somewhere else to have a better opportunity to play. Uh, so
So the driver behind that decision at the end of the day was you wanted to play football, like
yeah, and
plain and simple.
at that point, I was ready. Oh yeah, I wanted to be on the field. I felt like I was just working and working and working and not getting to play the sport that I love. And like that coming out of my mouth, especially nowadays, like I don't like the way that sounds because it sounds really selfish, and it sounds like I'm not willing to put the work in that I needed to get on the field. And I didn't feel that way at the time. I just felt like I wanted a better opportunity to play, and I think it was a smart move for me to transfer down to the level below. And it gave me a great opportunity to play. And then it ended up being the best decision I ever made as an athlete because, I started for 3 years and had a great career and played in a bunch of games and was all conference and just, I mean, I had a great career, and it was a really good decision. But at the time, it was a really hard decision to make because, I'm from a really small town in Missouri, and nobody gets Big Ten scholarships from where I'm, from the high school that I'm from, and my brother and I are two of the only uh, full ride scholarship football players to ever come out of the school, So, I mean, it's not like it happens very often. So I kind of felt like I was, there people were looking up looking up to me, and there was some things that I was thinking about that I shouldn't have been thinking about, just instead of thinking about myself and what's best for me. And I was really kind of, I was really, I talk to my players about this now because I think it's important for them to know that, us going through stuff, helps, it humanizes us a little bit, and it really helps them when they're going through some of the same things. But I, I was not in a good place. Academics started struggling academically because I was so worried about my football future, and just went through a tough time and ended up making a good decision and bounced out of it. And I'm really glad that I did it, but it just went through a tough time like a lot of these kids go through.
And I think that's something that for parents, and we went through this. We had a grandfather that brought his daughter in to train with us, and she was good enough to play Division One college softball, and they elected to go to a community college and play. And grandpa told me, he's like, it's easy. She's going to play as a freshman and start. And they've given her some money to go there, and they got her a job at the community college. So basically, she's going to go for free for 2 years and get to play. Whereas if she goes to a large D1 program, it'll be 2 years before she plays, and she may never start.
Yeah. And,
And
yeah, I knew my role. I knew being a small town kid, like that I wasn't high on the list of, I knew that I knew redshirting was going to be my future. I knew that I was going to have to grow into a role. I knew that I was going to have to do all these things, and I was ready to do that. It's just when you don't, when all your coaches that recruited you leave, you're kind of on an island and kind of have to prove yourself all over again. And I just don't think I was equipped mentally. I think about that time a lot because, the person that I am now, I feel like I would have thrived in that environment, and I would have been like, okay, I'll show you then. But at that time, I wasn't equipped as well as I, wish that I would have been. Um, but I learned great lessons, and I pushed through it, and I overcame all that, and I think it made me better.
so you end up at Eastern Illinois University, you play,
Yeah,
and you earn some accolades. So
yeah.
you get the playing time, and you actually get some rewards for producing on the football field. And then what?
So then I, it kind of comes to the point where didn't know what I wanted to do with my life because it's always been football, right? It's always been that's what I dedicated my life to, and I don't shy away from the fact that school was not something that I enjoyed or liked at all. Um, I did what I needed to do to stay eligible to play football. That was my mentality at that point, and I don't think there's no point to lie about that. Um, but so afterwards, I had good enough grades where, well, this is before then. I got contacted by some arena football teams. Kind of started training. I trained on my own on campus for our pro day at Eastern Illinois. Um, Kind of one of those things now that I wish that I would have went away somewhere and trained, or kind of devoted a little bit more time for that. Kind of tried to do that on my own. Ended up having an okay pro day, but didn't create any buzz for myself whatsoever. Kind of just didn't know what was next. I actually went home to coach freshman football with my dad, and just kind of to start thinking about what was next. And I got a stock job at Costco, just kind of very typical, like, what am I doing? I just graduated. What's next? Got contacted by some arena teams. Ended up going to Bloomington in that spring, Bloomington, Illinois. Tried out for their team, made it, played all season, and then kind of devoted, the near future to that. Ended up doing that for 3.5 years, and that's kind of where you and I met up, and kind of right after that first year, because my brother was going to NIU, and I kind of sent you just a pretty random email, or can't remember what it was at this
Well,
point.
no, it started with Tim. Tim calls me and says there's some guy at the counter that played college football and wants to go to the NFL, and you need to talk to him or whatever. And I think that led to an email. But in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to get some fat out of shape 10 years ago has been that's going to do nothing but waste my time. And I'll be lucky if he also doesn't smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day when he comes in. Because
Yeah,
I'd already had that with a few different people.
sure.
But in your case, you showed up and you were the real deal.
Because AR at that point was pretty new, pretty
Yeah.
technical. So like pretty, some good technology, pretty, everybody was pretty excited about it. The acceleration training was pretty popular in the Chicagoland area too. And so there's a lot of buzz around all of it too. And so that's where we linked up, and I devoted just that, those couple years of my life to trying to be the best player I can be, to create more opportunities for myself to, get contacted by bigger leagues. And from that initial conversation, you and I trained a lot together, and then ended up working at the gym for a little bit, and uh, it kind of stoked my fire a little bit for developing and coaching and things like that that I've always enjoyed. I've always loved the weight room. I've always understood what it did for me as an athlete. So being able to help people reach goals that they can't get to on their own is a pretty special thing. And I started with kids. You know, I had little kids in Athletic Republic, and um, didn't have like a huge group of people that I was training, but like really kind of started developing a passion for it, and kind of spent my off seasons really up there, and
So
doing.
that foundation then ends up looking like, from what everything you just mentioned, uh long-term athlete, but multi-sport athlete in high school, good enough to play college football with a Division I offer in the Big Ten from the University of Illinois. You recognized that you wanted to play more than anything and didn't want to have to keep re-earning your spot in the depth chart and hopefully a high enough place to actually play. So you went to Eastern, you graduated, you played pro football, which arenas you're getting paid to play. And then you
Yeah,
started working as a trainer. So that recap for people that want to get into coaching and training, you have to have a foundation. Wouldn't you agree, Jeff? Like you need to have you need to have an idea what's going on and some experience with it.
yeah, and I'll be the first to say that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't that early too. AR made it easy because of the templates, and you follow directions, and I'm a good direction follower. Um, but I think, yeah, like I think that it's important to understand and know the demands of the sport, and know what it really takes, and know kind of work ethic things and some things that you can really help them with regardless of your background. But there's base knowledge that you have to have, especially as you progress. So, from that point, once I got after 3.5 years of arena football and too many concussions and things like that, where I was just like, I wasn't advancing to where I wanted to advance to. Um, so I kind of like, okay, I need to, and now I was in the same situation I was in right at the end of college. Like, okay, football's done, coming to grips with that and understanding that, that it's done, and I need to continue to figure out what's next in my life. And this timeline's kind of messed up because it was only about 2 years. I got an opportunity to. My dad is this. I love telling this story because Eastern Illinois posted a graduate assistantship in the strength and conditioning department on Football Scoop, and my dad doesn't miss a thing on Football Scoop. Like it's like one of his daily check things. And he calls me and he's like, "Hey, do you know Eastern has a?" And at the time, that's still the football staff that I played for, so they're still there. And and he goes, "Hey, do you know Eastern Illinois has a strength job open?" And this is after my second year of arena ball. And and I said, "No, I didn't know that." So I called my defensive coordinator, Rock Bellantoni, uh, who's act who's actually the uh, defensive coordinator at FAU now. And I called him and I said, "Hey, do you know anything about this strength job?" And he goes, "Yeah, do you want it?" And I kind of laughed. I remember, and I was like, "Well, I think I do. I think I do." And I've never thought about going back to school and getting my master's degree ever, because, like I said earlier, like school is not something that I've ever enjoyed or thought that as an undergrad that I would ever go back and go to grad school. Like that's crazy. Um, ended up going there, meeting with the strength coach, getting the position, and then ended up continuing to play arena ball in Bloomington, commuting back and forth for that next year as a grad assistant, coaching, having teams, driving to Bloomington 3 nights a week to practice, and then playing on the weekends. So pretty crazy at that point. Still wasn't all the way decided what I wanted to do. Didn't really have that moment until Coach Ettinger, who's my mentor, who got uh, who got the job after I was there for a season at Eastern after that staff got let go. Came in with the new coach, Coach Bavers, who's the head coach at Syracuse now, and Coach Eddinger's the head strength coach at Syracuse now. But then, kind of got hooked up with him a little bit. He kind of started pushing my buttons a little bit and making me decide what I want to do, and stop all this coasting stuff and just kind of like going along for the ride. Like, you need to decide what you want to do, and I'm thankful for that. And I did. And once I decided, it was it. And 10 years later, I'm here.
So in the GA is a graduate assistantship, and normally that means, and for people tuning in, if you have an interest in sport, and we'll talk a little bit about the strength and conditioning coach requirements, but if you're going to get a master's degree related to like exercise or sport management, don't pay for the master's. Go find some place that will give you a graduate assistantship. You might have to do some work like Jeff did in the strength department for athletics, but you didn't pay for the master's, right?
I didn't pay for the master's. The thing nowadays, the exercise science, strength conditioning emphasis in undergrad is so much more prevalent, and it's everywhere now, where you're basically getting an undergrad in exercise science, and then you can go do your master's in whatever. But you have to go do a GA. It's kind of like you intern for free as long as you can, or as long as you need to get a grad assistantship. But now they even want, nowadays, because everybody is so qualified, and there's so many of these courses and programs, that graduate assistants, you're not going to get a graduate assistant job without being certified through the either the NSCA or the CSCCA, which are the two big certs that college strength and conditioning coaches need to have. So that's pretty crazy, because when I was a GA, I didn't have anything, and it was always like, okay, you'll work to get your certification by the end of your graduate assistantship. And
so that requirement then is you're going to have a bachelor's degree, and then you need to have one of the certs that is recognized in collegiate athletics before they're even going to consider you for that GA spot.
There's still some places that are more lenient with it, where as long as you're progressing towards your master's, you might get a GA spot still, or as long as you're progressing towards your certification,
They might give you a spot.
they might give you a spot. But like, if you want to solidify it, like, being, it's crazy. It takes a lot. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time. And it's like, it's still a profession that's stuck in the Stone Ages with pay. Like, you're not going to make any money in this until down the road, after you've already, you make $40,000 and coach, 10 teams, and have these crazy packed days from 5 a.m. to 7 p.m, and barely scrape by. But that's just what this profession is. And until that changes,
There's no way around it.
There's a ton of because there's just a ton of overqualified people banging at the door to work for $40,000. And until people put their foot down and say, like, listen, like, I'm not doing that. It's not going to change. But that's just the kind of, just this profession is crazy. It's an awesome job, but there's a lot going on.
So your athletic career as an athlete, you playing football, kind of, I think, set the foundation. I did work with you from a training standpoint. You've got an exceptional work ethic, in that, that can't be bought. Somebody either shows up and does the work, no matter what the work is, to the best of their ability, or they don't. So that's kind of a must have. And then getting into a master's program, and ideally you don't pay for it. So that means you got to get a GA, and that means you're going to have to be certified. And given the number of programs and the number of undergrads coming out of those programs, it's competitive to get those GA spots now. So you better be doing the work to set yourself apart.
You got to stack all that with all these volunteer internships. Like, you get freshmen now that are banging at your door to come be on the floor, freshmen that just graduated high school that are trying to get a leg up on um, getting on the floor and getting real reps and real um, exposure to all what the profession is, and so that they can uh, a real experience, to get to see what the profession is and get stack all this time so they can put those on their resume, and they might go to 2 or 3 different schools on the summer and get all these volunteer internships, and you're not getting paid a dime for this, but it's to set you up to help you try to get a graduate assistant job.
And we had a client a year ago that, well, I guess a little over 2 years ago, she had commented that she was already doing training and coaching. She said she wanted to be a collegiate strength coach. And I said, like, you have an opportunity, and you also will kind of wrongfully so have a little bit of a stigma because you're female. Like people can say what they want, but some folks are going to look at you and say, well, she's a girl. I said, so, one, you need to be able to stand out. And she could put up decent numbers for her body weight on the big lifts and the Olympic lifts. And then I said, you need to go get your USAW, you need to get CSCS. And she did. And she came back to me and she's like, all right, I got all this stuff. Now what? I'm like, well, now you need to start shaking the trees and you need to make your way into somebody's program. And last year in like April, May timeframe, she went to the university here, and I won't say the name. People can figure it out if they know where I'm at, but she just kept showing up. And I'm like, you need to email and call every person in the athletic coaching department and get in front of them, make sure they know who you are. And she kept doing stuff like that, and then just started showing up, like you said, volunteering. And guess what happened? She got a graduate assistantship.
Yeah.
So you people that are out there, like, if you want to do this, you can't just say you want to do this. You better be willing to do the work, or you're going to have somebody that is going to do the work, that is going to go to those 3 schools over the summer and give freely of their time, and they're going to take your GA.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can say what you want about it, like, if you're not willing to work for free early on in this job, in this profession, then you're not going to make it. Just it's
It,
way too competitive,
it,
now.
and it's harsh, but it's the reality. I mean, you're looking at, your head football coach probably would like to win. And that means that the head football coach better have a team. And by team, I don't mean the football players. There better be a staff in place that can produce winners. Because if there's someone that the weak link, if they're not contributing to producing a winning football program, they're going to cost the program wins. There's no room for that. And if you're the person that's like, well, I don't want to give up my summer, or I'm not working for free, well, guess what? There probably isn't room for you on the bus.
Yeah, you gotta learn that. You gotta learn that early. It's it, and whether I'm right or wrong for this, right? Like, I've missed so many things that I've sacked just because of my profession. Like really good friends' weddings, and birthdays, relatives that do things in the fall that want you to come, and it's like, can't, like, I dedicated myself to this. Like, this is my job. Like, I can't just come as much as I want to come to that wedding and be there for my best friend. I know those are experiences I'll never get back, but it's just what I decided to be and who I decided to be. And
And if
until I'm out, that's who I like. That's the kind of dedication and the kind of things that I'm willing to sacrifice for my job. And, I still get people come, oh, coach, I scheduled this family vacation. Oh, I did this, or I got this going on. I'm like, guys, like, you're not getting any sympathy from me. If you miss mandatory team activity, that's on you. Like, I've missed a lot of things in my life that I wish I could have gone to, like family vacations, for instance, like a lot of stuff. But it's part of it. And if it's just like being successful in anything, though, like, you have to make up your mind, and you have to be willing to put you have to be willing to sacrifice. Like there's no growth that comes without sacrifice, and sometimes pain. It's
And
uh,
if
and
we
I'm,
compare
no, it's just that's just real.
and if we compare and contrast, like what if you didn't have that outlook? Would you be a strength coach at the level you're a strength coach? Well, the answer is probably no.
Yeah, and is that and is that okay? I don't know. Like, um, but it's true.
Not if it's, I mean, if that's the job that you want, you have to be willing to do the work that that job requires, or you need to redefine what it is you want to do.
Yeah,
Because there's no in there, people don't understand this, but it's true in every area. Like there's no room on the bus for someone that's not going to contribute what's needed to be contributed. Like someone's got to do that. And if that's your job as coach, you got to show up even when maybe you want to be at that wedding or you want to be on vacation. So let's talk a little bit about where you are now as a strength coach. You when you look at how many athletes are you typically providing training for?
so right now I'm a football only strength coach, so which is
What's the
which
roster?
which is beautiful. Right now right now we're right at 85, but we got more coming in right now. But I mean, I'll just always say 100.
So
um,
100 athletes, and they could be anywhere from an incoming freshman that starts college like I did at age 17, and then you might have somebody that redshirted, maybe a COVID year, maybe a transfer. They could be 23, right?
yeah, very easily, yep.
And now here you are, you're Coach Sobel, and you have to find a way to extract every bit of effort out of them. How are you like? How do you manage 100 athletes of a very diverse age? I mean, a 17-year-old male athlete is, for the most part, now you're going to get some outliers, but it is going to be very different than a 21 or 22-year-old male athlete.
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I think, and then there's a million ways to do it, right? I mean, if we're talking about just a programming standpoint from X's and O's, like, I have two staff members with me too. I have an assistant and I have a graduate assistant, and all three of us are only football. Our only responsibility is football, so they don't have other sports. They don't have anything else that they're responsible for. So it's basically three of us, with some help for volunteer interns and other things like that, that we're responsible for. Yeah, training 100 guys at a time. Now it's not all 100 in at once, but what it is 100 different personalities. It's 100 different ways to reach them. It's 100 different people to motivate. And it does seem daunting when you think about it like that, but you know you spend so much time with them and you're around them so much that you develop really good relationships with them, and you know what makes them tick, and you know who you can get on, and you know who you can't, and you know what they respond to. So it's, I like to tell young coaches this, like, and I'm still a young coach, I when I say that, but you know coaching is an art, and they call us strength coaches for a reason, because it's not just straight from the NSCA book. Like, yeah, that's good knowledge and base knowledge that you have to have, but you can know all your stuff. You can be a really smart guy and really smart, or a really smart person, really smart coach, and go on the floor and stand in front of 40 football players right before a lift and explain to them what they're about to do. And a lot of times it's not going to be stuff that they're going to enjoy. So then you have to motivate them. Then you have to make it relevant why they're doing it. Explain to them, there's so much to it. That's why I call it an art. It's coaching is not just black and white. It's not just, oh, go stand on the floor and tell them exactly what they're doing, and then go sit on your desk and go sit in your desk. Like, that's not what you do. And I mean, there's we divide it up into groups, like, I think we have about 40 in two groups right now because we're training offense, defense, we're training the side of the ball. Summer's just a little bit different mentality for me because I want them to be around each other as much as possible because, the real stuff is getting real close and the sense of urgency is really high. So I view summer as a big time to come together as a family, to come together as a group, to see each other struggle, to push through those, to develop leaders. And I want them around each other as much as possible. And I know that big groups aren't ideal from a training standpoint, but big groups have lots of juice and big groups have a lot of enthusiasm. And I want them to be around each other on their good days and their bad days so they can help each other push through and come together. Um, but, you know, one thing I started, you know, one thing I started a little bit at Kent, but right when I got to Akron, I sat down with every player and I asked them a series of questions. And the series of questions are everything from like, tell me about where you're from, tell me about your family, brothers and sisters, and give me your background on that. Why do you love football? There's a lot of times that they never get asked that question. Um, what motivates you when things get hard? Um, just some fun ones. What's your favorite athlete of all time? What do your tattoos mean? Just some cool stuff that I'm trying to get to know them because relationships matter. And I think that a lot of people think that we're just motivators and cheerleaders. And yeah, to an extent, sometimes we are looking for motivation, but motivation's fickle. Motivation comes and goes. Teaching these kids how to be disciplined and making the right choices on a day in and day out is what really works. Motivation is cool, and I want to be able to motivate them, and I do, but that's the thing that comes and goes all the time. And discipline is something that if you teach them the right way, that will be there forever past football when they have to get up at 6:30 in the morning when their alarm clock goes off when they have a job that they hate. Um, that's
In
just
that, in the motivation thing, people ask all the time, well, how do you stay motivated? I mean, the answer is you don't. There's not one area of your life you're going to stay motivated. It's just the way it is. Discipline, however, allows you to do the things that you must do when you do not want to.
yeah,
And looking at everything you said, for people that want to be good at coaching, or want to be good at being a leader, or working with groups of people, I you put a group together because you got to build that family. Times of the essence. Your season at the time of recording this, your season is what? A month and a half away. What do you got?
yeah.
6 weeks, 5 weeks maybe to your first
Well,
game?
but no, we start camp in August, so we're a little over a month away from fall camp,
So
which
now's the time to team build. And
yeah.
then how much, back to kind of like I said, you
I
building
know
that foundation. What's that?
I got way off topic. I know. Sorry.
No, you didn't though. But that the foundation of you having been an athlete, you having grown up in a household with parents that were college athletes, and I think you probably learned things from your parents that you didn't even realize because they both played sport. Like not everybody gets to play college sports. So just the fact that your mom and dad both played collegiate sports, that's a big deal. That's significant. But growing up in that starts that foundation. You playing high school football, foundation, your experience at U of I, foundation is what I call tuition, right?
Yeah,
You're making your bones. You go into Eastern, more tuition. You learn something there. And then you play arena ball. You come work with me, and then you go back to school. That foundation, I think, is why, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's why you can walk into the weight room with 40 college athletes that are 15 years your junior and be able to relate to them. And not only that, but you know what they need and you know how to put it together. I.e., I need to sit down with each one of these football players and learn about them
yeah,
because that gives you tools to be better at your job.
yeah. And I kind of say this a lot too because it's important to me still. And if this ever becomes uncool, maybe it is time for me to get out. But I always want to be a coach that walks the walk, and I don't ever want to be, especially because of what we're asking them to do a lot of times is difficult and it's hard.
That's in
Uh,
my notes. So let's get into that.
okay.
Walk, walk the talk the walk. However you want to phrase it. How are you doing that as a coach? Because you're not a spring chicken anymore. Like you're not a college athlete. I don't know if
Yeah.
you realize that or not, but you're not. So,
I know.
but how do you remain relevant?
So I want to think about it like this. If I'm not doing something uncomfortable on a daily basis, and I don't mean, when I say uncomfortable, I don't necessarily mean um to the point where I'm, doing what I did in my powerlifting career, like, loading 700 pounds on a bar and things like that. I want to challenge myself. And that could be something as small as coaching all morning, being exhausted by the time the players are out, sitting down for an hour, that feeling that, oh, I don't need to do anything today. I should take it easy. I should drink some water, hydrate, and so I can go tomorrow. Be like, no, like that's not what I decided to, that's not who I am or what I'm all about. I want, I typically do the program that my guys are doing because I want to know how they feel. And I want to come in the next day and feel the same thing that they feel and be able to push through my hamstrings being sore or my low back being tight, or, the things that they feel, I want to feel too. And, like, and I know that I'm not always going to be able to do that. And I'm not saying that I do it at the same intensity, but, it's pretty damn close right now. But that's because I take a lot of pride in it. And I don't ever want to be a coach that just barks at players and is not willing to put themselves in situations. And and there's a lot of things that I modify, and there's some things that I do, but you know what? Like, if I can't do what they're doing, I'm going to find something that challenges me. I'm going to go out and push a sled that's really hard, or I'm going to go out and do something uncomfortable and run or walk the stadium. Or I just feel like there's an element of that makes you a genuine coach. That I know there's a lot of good coaches that don't lift a that, that aren't lifters or power lifters or anything like that. And I get that and I understand that. I know you can be a good coach without that, but that's just not who I am. And I want to be genuine, and I want to be the most consistent person in their life. And if I'm in there barking at them and not willing to put myself in an uncomfortable situation, and I'm really pushing them to finish this drill or do something hard or go a little harder every single time, and I'm not willing to do that myself, it makes me a hypocrite. And I don't like hypocrites, you know.
Well, I think the label coach is really its leader, and people will follow a leader that are willing to do what they're asking others to do. And I think that one of the things it has impressed me since you went into collegiate athletics as a coach is seeing your social media content and seeing that you are making yourself relevant. I see loaded bars and I see you under them, and I see chains and everything else hanging off the bars. And it's kind of hard as someone that lifts weights to not respect the work going on. You don't need to do that. You don't have to ever get on. You never have to put a loaded barbell on your back again. You did your time.
Yeah,
You did what you had to do to play at the levels you played at, and you now have the coaching job. Yet here you are bringing the pain,
yeah.
load the bar.
It and it's why I got into powerlifting for the short time that I did too. I ended up getting an 1862 total in my like third powerlifting meet. Um, that's I built up to that. There's something about powerlifting that I've always loved, that getting under a bar that scares me, or putting something in my hand that scares me. And I think that that's what I just missed from football being over, not being scared, but that nervous energy that's just you can't mimic anywhere. It's a great nervous energy, like standing on the sidelines looking over at the other team before you take the field for the first drive, is like what I just couldn't find anywhere else. And powerlifting was the closest thing to that, and then, boy, I got up to 285 pounds, right? And I'm not, and, it was fun and it was cool, but I want to be able to walk up steps and tie my shoes and do things, with my kids and not feel like I'm gonna die.
But I think though, I look at that stuff in for me personally, and I never got asked this, and I was speaking to a college class a year or so back as a guest speaker, and the professor asked me, and for me, when I did what I did in the gym, it was in large part because you couldn't buy it. Like, why was leg day Friday? Because I had a sales meeting Friday. And if I got under a loaded bar with 500 pounds and made it go up and down for a couple sets of singles and triples, I was going to crush it the rest of the day. And nobody could buy that. Well, why do you have to do that? It's like, man, you don't understand. Like, you
Yeah.
can't buy this. Like, the only way to get this is to earn it and to look at it and say, I'm a little like your nervous energy. I'm a little worried about this, but I will be the victor. And
Yeah. I
there's value in that. And it goes back to that tuition and building that foundation. Your athletes know that and they respect it.
Yeah. Like, and that all that stuff is cool. And I because I never walk on the floor with my athletes and demand respect, because respect is such a sacred thing. And respect and love and all these big powerful words that we like to use as coaches, they carry a lot of weight, right? They mean a lot. And respect, trust, love, all these things that we talk about. But I'm never going to walk out on the floor like when I first got to Akron. Like, I'm not going to walk out and demand respect. I was like, I promise you, I'm going to earn your respect, because the best respect is earned. The real respect is earned. I'm going to love you already because I decided to, and it's not a feelings love. It's an agape love. It's a love that I have high standards and expectations for you, love, and I'm not going to let you drift below what, because nobody's ever said this to you. Like, when I say I love you, I mean it, because I'm going to give you every single thing I have, and I'm going to hold you to an extremely high standard. And trust is earned. And the first time they walk between the white lines and dominate their opponents, I hope they do think about the work that they put in, and start really trusting what the plan that we're putting together. And but that all takes time.
And it's
All that real stuff takes time. Um and and I wouldn't want it any other way. And I wouldn't want them to just blatantly respect me and trust me. Like, I want them to be, I want them to, you know, ask questions. I want them to, why are we doing this? Like, I welcome those questions, and I want that stuff to happen, because if I can't answer those questions, I shouldn't be programming what I'm programming.
in that a lot of times in all areas of life, people that, your answer there, most people that are in a position like you are, they just want to say things like, well, that's what we're doing, not actually have a data backed reason for it and be able to explain it, or maybe be open to a conversation where maybe the athlete points something out and you're like, you know what? Never considered that. We need to modify this. There's a better way.
Or I know there's 3 or 4 different ways to do this. This is why we're doing it this way, because I've seen this and I think that this works the best. I know that there's other ways to do it, but this phase, this time of year, I think that this is the best, and you're going to have to, have a little faith that I,
You know what you're talking about.
I have best interest at heart. Faith is belief without evidence. And so when I first walk into a room, they know the history of Kent. They know all that stuff already, right? They know that the product that we built was different there, and we went through a lot of changes to make it that way. But so I had a little bit of street cred with them because of that, but not from a relationship standpoint. They didn't know me, not from any of that. Like, I have to make time for that, and I have to earn love, trust, respect. And I don't want to be given any of that.
And if you were, it would be short term.
Yeah.
It's not going to last a season. It's not going to last the athlete's career. in the tenure you're the strength coach.
or it's not real. You know, you can
Right.
say kind of like what we're dealing with now. Like, you know, we have a lot of people, everybody, any place in the country has a lot of people that say they want to be good and all these different things. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want to be all conference, I want to win a lot of games. Cool. I do too. I want to see you do that. And I want $1 million, you know, but like that wanting it doesn't mean like you have to be willing to you have
What are
to
you
do
gonna do for it?
work. Yeah. Yeah, cameo.
Hi, Sloan. And even that, I used to tell staff, I don't think you ever heard this because I didn't have to have this conversation with you. But there were people where I'd have to bring them in the office, have a conversation and be like, listen, if you keep sitting in front of the fireplace and saying, give me heat, and you're not willing to build the fire, at some point you're not going to be able to work here. Like
Yeah.
you don't walk in and say, give me heat. You need to walk in and say, it's cold, we need heat. How can I help build the fire? And if you don't want to be part of that process, I
Not
will
for
not allow you to be here.
yeah, I agree.
So uncomfortable. And well, I want to mention one thing from your standpoint, doing their workouts. I think it gives you an unparalleled way to relate to what they're doing. And then I think it gives you an ability to maybe refine the program because when you're laying out programming, if you're laying out a few weeks of programming, it's theoretical until it's set into action. You might think week 1 we do this, or this day we're going to do this, and then this day we're doing this over here. But you doing the workout, you might realize that you're going to adjust some of the things in the future.
Yep.
Do you see
Yeah.
that at all?
Well, I do, and I think more early in my career, when I'm experimenting and kind of developing as a coach and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. I think a lot of that was the case where, you know, we've all done 5-3-1 a million times. We've all done cube method. Finding all these different ways to challenge yourself and figure stuff out, and develop your, you know, reading the tier system and figuring out how you want to program and developing your identity as a coach. I think training is the best for all that to figure out what stuff feels like, to understand what the demands of it is. And, you know, am I hinging too much in one day? Am I doing too much of this in one day? Do I need to put an accessory on a different day? I think that's really important. But at this point now, I've refined that enough where, like, you know, I'm not going to gauge how I feel on what my athletes, because they are should be able to do it at a lot a lot better than me, you know.
But on that same token, though, for people that are considering getting into this or really anything, you spent the time laying that foundation. You already went through those things
Yeah.
that gave you a perspective to know, okay, I'm not their age and I'm no longer playing. And there's validity to that. Like you're 15 years older than probably your oldest athletes on average.
Yeah.
But you actually have done, you went through it enough to know, okay, this accessory lift needs to be here. Or you know what, this volume is inadequate. We need more volume here, and maybe we need more intensity here, and it's delinquent. So I'll make the change. But the only way to know that is to have done some of it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like when we're talking to interns and GAs and things like that, when, you know, a lot of them already like to train anyway because they wouldn't even be sitting in the seats
You'd
if they
hope
all
not.
didn't enjoy it, right? You know, or they're there for a reason because they love the weight room, or, you know, they've developed a relationship with it at some point in time. Um, but that's, you know, that's an important factor of it. You know, our GA right now is a competitive power lifter, like a USAPL competitive powerlifter that's in meet prep all the time. I mean, he's got a meet over the 4th of July break. So I mean, he's coaching all day, finding ways to make sure his nutrition is right, and he's gonna fly down to Atlanta over the 4th of July and compete. So I mean, around you know, our guys are around people that love this stuff. You know, it's love what the room does, love the process, love the, you know, not focusing on results, focusing on the day-to-day work, because the results will come if you work the right way.
And you mentioned the uncomfortable thing, and I think that's something today. I mean, yeah, it's like, I don't know, 85 degrees out, humid, sun's out, it's hot. I'm in an air conditioned office. We're never we're conditioned to never be uncomfortable today. We
Yeah,
grow up where, everybody around us does everything they can to make sure we're comfortable, and in that our struggles are minimized. Everything from, clothing, food, temperature, getting to work. And I think the reality of it is, in your case, you're asking 100 young adults to be uncomfortable on a daily basis. And you better be able to get uncomfortable yourself, and you better be able to relate and understand what that means.
I think there's a lot of coaches that like to, when you start talking about toughness and you start to talk about all these things, we got to be mentally, physically tough, and all these coaches that preach a lot of tough, hard things that aren't, again, that aren't willing to put themselves in uncomfortable, tough environments, and I just, that's just never going to be me. Like, if that's me, I'm out. Like, if I find myself demanding toughness and demanding all these things, and I'm not willing to put myself there anymore, um, I think that's it. Maybe that's my moment, Ray. Maybe that's
That
the time. I wake up and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not willing to do this anymore, because I feel like that's a big factor in it. There's gonna be a lot of there's probably a lot of coaches and all the Twitter warriors and all these coaches that'll probably say that I'm wrong for that, and I really don't care, because you know, I think that that's an important element of it.
I 100% think that that's an important element. I think the majority of, at least our country, other countries have different sets of issues, but here most people aren't doing what they want to do. They're not doing what they're meant to do. They're not passionate about what they do. And if those things, if you're not doing what you're meant to do, you're not doing what you want to do, and you're not passionate about it, you're not going to do the extra work. You're not going to be comfortable getting uncomfortable, and you're going to do a mediocre job. You'll never be good at it. And
I
in
guess
your case,
you're not going to be good at it at all,
no,
right? Yeah,
if you were wrong with what you just said, you wouldn't have produced the record that you did at the university that you were last at, because
yeah,
you certainly played a role. It's not just the coaches on the football field that are coaching the X and O's and their positions and everything else. It's that, what went on in the off season,
it's the day to
what went
day.
on in the spring, what went on in
Yep,
the summer, who's with those athletes the most. It's you.
yep,
So if you were wrong, it wouldn't produce the W's.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
And, my advice to you, you already got it, you'll get it again here, is, when you get to that point, if you get to that point, you might not, man. 20 years from now, you might be enjoying what you're doing
Yep,
and doing it the same way on your terms. The day you realize that your terms have changed, you need to acknowledge that, accept that you're an individual, not defined as a coach. You're Jeff Sobol. That's also Coach Sobol. Not, you don't exist as Jeff Sobol, but you need to acknowledge that you're no longer interested, and go do something else.
yeah. I agree, and like right now, like, I'm just so deeply invested and love what I do so much that seems like it's going to be so far away. But yeah, I mean, it's just a point where I'm just not even close to being at yet.
Hopefully that's in the long distance future. But the fact that you're even aware of that, and you are starting to have an awareness and understanding of why you're good at what you do, is priceless, because most people never put those pieces together. If they're they put the bar on the floor and they try not to trip over it, and they don't even know why they didn't trip. What are the top 3 things you feel you should do as a coach? And what are the top 3 things you feel you shouldn't do as a coach? Like, what are the must do's, and what are the 3 biggest
I
mistakes?
think that developing relationships with your players or your athletes is could be one of the most important things that you can possibly do, that makes programming, that makes all these things better when you have better relationships with them. So I think relationships number one. I think, you know walking the walk, number two for me for sure. And then being genuine and being real, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in college athletics now. With recruiting and the transfer portal and all these different things where there's a lot of people that act a certain way just for a certain reason, whether that's to get a recruit or, you know, what to impress people or any of that. But people see right through that, and they know when somebody's being genuine and somebody's not. And that's one of the biggest things that I pride myself on being as a coach. I want to be genuine and I want to be real. And if I'm upset with my players, they're going to know exactly why I'm upset with them. But I don't want them to walk into the room every day and wonder what version of Coach Sobel they're going to get. I want it to be one of the most consistent, genuine people in their life.
What about the don't do's?
The don't do's, I mean, man, I feel kind of weird telling people what they shouldn't do, but I think that, I mean, we can just kind of go like, don't assume too much, because like that's a relationship thing, right? That's a communication thing. And any good relationship with communication is important. I think a lot of times we assume too much. And what I mean by that is there's some of these kids' backgrounds and how they've been raised and what they've been exposed to, might be a lot more adverse than you your point in your life. If you're a first year coach, don't just assume that you've been through so much more than this kid. Like, you have no idea where he came from. You have no idea what he's been through. And there's a lot of things that I think coaches use a lot of tough language and a lot of hard words and a lot of things like that, thinking that that the kid's just being soft or the kid's just being, or he's just weak. But, you got to be willing to put in the time with them and to help them out through those moments, because that's your job. But I think there's a lot of times where coaches write people off too fast and assume too much about them, thinking that they know what, already about, what these kids are going through and all these things. I think that kind of covers my first one when I was talking about relationships. But I think that also with programming, don't go too fast and don't try to do the popular thing all the time. Do what you're comfortable with and that you're proficient at, so you can coach really, really well and not water down your program. Because I think we're all victim, we all spend a lot of time on social media and we see the next best thing and, oh, this is really cool. I like that drill. Okay. But do you know why that drill is getting run? What progression is it? How far is it into the program? Are your athletes ready for it? Like, stop trying to come up with all these fancy things that you don't know how to coach what you know how to coach, progress from there. Don't neglect your own health and wellness. I think that taking care of yourself is really important, because we, again, practice what you preach when your hydration and your food and your sleep and all these things that add up. And, because like it or not, you chose a job where you can't just drive to work, sit in your cubicle, work on your report for 3 hours as you wake up from what you did the night before. Like, you get to work and you have to be the source of energy. You have to be juiced up. You have to be ready. You have to be full of energy, because they're the ones moping in and you got to pick them up on some of those mornings. So if you're not taking care of your body, you can't be that person for them.
What's your work day like? So off season, how many hours do you work a day? And then kind of
Well,
in season, how many hours?
so right now, summertime, uh, we're pretty much full blast from 6 in the morning to about noon. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but we have a team running them. My bare minimum rule is that I'm walking into the facility an hour before the first, and that's most of the time it's more than that. Because again, making sure everything's set up, making sure all the details are right, making sure our papers are printed, make sure everything we need so that when they walk in, everything's ready to roll. So we'll have a team run in the morning, we'll have 2 lift groups afterwards, and then we'll have a freshman group in the afternoon. So, and then I usually have a meeting. I usually find time to train, which is usually about an hour and a half. And then I have a meeting with my head coach in the later afternoon. And when you just kind of say it like that, there's some things, it doesn't initially sound that bad. But if you think about an hour run with the team where you're super, super active on your feet, doing drills, all the stuff that, and they transition right into the weight room, hour and a half each group on the floor. It's a lot from an energy standpoint. And then you're smoked by the early evening. So that's kind of like what all summer looks like in season. I haven't really gone through a season with this coach yet, but I think we're going to train in the morning. They'll go to class all day, and then we'll have practice in the afternoon, and that'll be pretty much every day, all the way until December. Hours wise, don't even know. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's significant. And
Yeah.
I don't think, kind of like you had said before, with the volunteering non-paid interns, people don't realize how much time strength and conditioning coaches put in for collegiate athletics, and it's often the afterthought of an athletic program. And a lot of times, like I had strength coaches I've known over the years. If football was winning, the strength coach was awesome, and but didn't get credit for the wins. The head football coach did. If the program's losing, head football coach points the finger at strength conditioning, says my
Yeah.
athletes weren't ready. I got too many athletes on crutches. It's your fault.
The really cool thing is now that really is flipping and switching, and there are coaches acknowledge that they do spend the most time with us, and this is an extremely important hire, to set the tone for the culture, but also to make sure programming is right and they get what they need from a performance standpoint, and that there's $1 million strength coaches now, right? Like, there's coaches, in the Power 5 level, they're getting paid $1 million, and this, which is great for our profession. It's growing from a respect standpoint that way too, with how much time we put in with the players, and that's an important element of it. And this is my recruiting spiel when these kids come. I was like, listen, you guys spend a lot of time with your recruiting coaches, and that's great. And you'll have a meeting with the head coach, and that's great. I want you guys to feel good about those relationships. But when you're standing down here in this presentation that I'm giving right now, this is the person that's gonna have the most immediate impact on you right away, because this is the person that you're gonna work with right away, and this is the person you're gonna spend the most time with over the course of your career. So make the decision on the place that's best for you. But parents and athletes, ask the strength coach questions. Look at them in the eye and make sure that you believe that they are telling the truth, and trust your instincts. And this is a relationship that's extremely important. And if I'm not that person for you, go somewhere where you really think that
How
person
much how
is.
much of that perspective comes from you not only having been an athlete, but having been an athlete back to that small town, one of two kids to go to a D1 full ride football program for college. But then in your case, not only were you the athlete, but you moved from one program to another. How much of that perspective and insight comes from that?
I think a little bit, just because of my experience and understanding how much of a role that the from a mentality standpoint, and from a obviously physical tool standpoint, how important the weight room is. I learned that at a young age, because I wasn't blessed God given ability like for instance my brother was. You know, I worked myself into a Big Ten scholarship, and a big part of that was the weight room in high school.
And let's pull that in. So you said it to me, or you told it to me, and that's where I got it and stole it. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work. What was the saying?
Well, like that,
Yeah, how did you say it?
that's it.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work?
Yeah. I mean, because when talent doesn't work hard, yeah. I mean, hard work, like, I had talent and I had ability and I had God given size and things like that you can't train.
So do a lot of other kids from big urban
Sure,
markets though, right?
sure, sure. It's just it was just something that I don't know why I loved it. I started seeing results from it, and I just fell in love. Like, I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the work, and I fell in love with people telling me that I can't. You know, and I just all those things that I almost like the asshole in me just couldn't. I needed it, and it just thrived on it. Um, but a kid across town getting a Big 12 scholarship from the in-state school drove me crazy, and just just elevated my work even more. And just I was always, but that's to get back to where I mentioned it, is because that's where I developed that relationship with that room. And I think that I always had a perspective on it where I knew that that was an important position. But obviously now it's my livelihood. It's how I keep my lights on in my house. So I want to create value for the profession and value for the position. But this goes back to me being genuine again, right? I'm not going to tell kids stuff that's not true. I feel that way. I think that from a culture standpoint, from a performance standpoint, you need to feel really comfortable with the strength coach, and that needs to be a important decision. That needs to be high up on the list for where you end up choosing to go.
And these are things every time I talk to a former collegiate athlete, one, the many times the athletes that had an opportunity to play in college, they were gifted, they had work ethic, but along with that, I learned that they were doing these other things. Like they had this motivation, kid across town got a ride to an in-state school. I can beat that. Somebody told me I can't. Well, watch, I'm going to go into the weight room and I'm going to make up for whatever deficiency they believe I had that led to them say I can't. And I'm
Yeah.
going to prove them wrong.
Or
Um,
weight room's locked. I'm going to throw my little brother through the window in the morning because I've done that. So
so in he let you in, right?
yeah, we got his little ass through the window. It was one of those old school windows that you could pop open, and we threw him in the morning at like 6:30 in the morning. But I got up 3 times a week in high school and lifted before school.
And those are, that, and I think that that ties into that foundation. That's why you have the job that you do today. That's why, again, it is the path you take, right? Well, it's athletics. And as a professional coach told me when I asked him, I'm like, well, what makes you a good coach? And he said it's easy. It's wins and losses. In your case, if there weren't more W's than L's, then your approach is wrong. But it's
Yeah,
producing. So you're doing things right. But I think it comes from that. Well, I worked out 3 mornings a week, but you could have slept in.
just slept in.
Your friends did.
Yeah, my friends did, but my friends. A lot of my friends still talk about the fact that they feel like I'm where I'm at because of stuff like that. And you know, and I never felt like it was something that I was battling to do every day. I wanted to. Um, so
Which,
I think that just built. I think just a little different upstairs.
no, I don't think it's a little different upstairs. It goes back to what I said before. If you look at most people in this country that get up and go to work, and by the way, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Except most people go to work and do a job they don't like. They're not passionate about it. They don't love it. And as a result, they don't want to do the extra. They're not doing what they should be doing, which is why they shun the extra. You have a young athlete that you knew what you wanted to do. You told me what you wanted to do. When the first time I met you, and you may not remember this, but you said, I still want to play football. And it was that was just the way it was going to be. So whatever you needed to do to play football, you were going to do. And most people aren't doing what they're meant to be. And that's why back then, when your friends weren't getting up in the morning, playing football wasn't that important to them. They might have said they wanted to go to U of I like you, but they really didn't, or they would have been excited to get up and do the work.
Well, my brother wasn't excited to get up, but I made him get up and go with me. So I instilled that in him. So he tells stories like that all the time. He likes telling those. But
But I mean, it's true. And that's when you look at successful people, coaching is leadership. A successful coach is no different than a successful CEO or president or vice president. The people that are successful tend to enjoy what they're doing. They're passionate about it. And the craziest thing about it is this: they don't mind doing the extra work. They don't care if they do some work on the weekend. They're not disgruntled about, damn it, I got to do this work and it's the weekend. They're happy to do the work because they realize the work is the path to success.
yeah, I
And
agree.
I think that's, most people that's lost on. That's where you get oh, must be nice to get to go do this. Well, you could do this. You might be better at it than I am. You just don't want to
Yeah.
do the work.
You haven't seen, or I like the iceberg. I like the iceberg picture every year when the draft comes around, because the media portrays the media likes to make this huge deal about them walking up on the stage and getting their award and talking about where they're going, and it's awesome. But the amount of work that those kids have put in to put themselves in those situations is stuff that nobody sees. That they're not focused, that the media is not focused on. Like, so that all these college kids think that those guys were just in the right situations, and they just because they were at Alabama is the reason they got drafted number one. No, they went through a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifice to put themselves in a situation like that. And there's a lot of work that gets involved, and you just get to see the tip of the iceberg sticking out of the water.
Underneath the surface. And that goes back to when I talk to athletes like you. Like, I asked Chandler about this one time, and he told me at that point in time, he was like, I'm like, how'd you end up playing college football? And he's like, well, I was this or that. I'm like, well, what else did you do? He's like, well, every weekend I made VHS tapes of my highlight stuff and I wrote like an essay and I would mail them out to colleges all over the country.
Yeah,
Well, did he play college football because he was that good? Well, yeah, sure. There's probably part of that, but there are probably other kids just as good at playing quarterback in football, may have been even better, but they weren't copying, like dubbing VHS tapes
yeah.
and then writing a letter or essay or whatever, and then sending them to colleges all over the country.
That just shows our age because that's what we used to have to do.
Yeah, but not everybody did though. But that's the thing
Yeah,
though. Not everybody did.
yeah,
But the kids that went somewhere did, that's like camps and showcases.
yeah.
That's the kids that spent their summer doing that stuff got seen.
And that's what I had to do as a small town kid. I had to get myself out there. So it was
So
it was
yeah, and
interesting.
go ahead.
It was an interesting process. It was cool because I went to a camp, and I went to Illinois camp, because I was getting very lightly recruited by them, just more size stuff, because I was a multi-year all-state player, and it was before my senior year. And um, I go to Illinois camp and get registered and everything, and they had put me in the number one group. Which, when you're in the number one group, that means that you're with all the best prospects from all over the country in the number one group. And as soon as I'll never forget my dad's face. My dad, when we registered, because Coach Mack, the recruiting coach at Illinois, came and told my dad, we got him in group one. Like, here's it. Like, I'll never forget the look on his face, because he was like, oh shit. Like, I don't know. Like, almost kind of like, I don't know if he's that good. You know what I mean? And that was okay with me at that point, because I was like, shit, I don't know either.
We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out. And had a great camp, put a lot of people on their back that I shouldn't have, and the rest is that, and I just went and was coachable and was able to do what I needed to do. And it was a great moment for me of clarification, to know that I belonged, and then knew that the work kind of came to a point where I was like, all right, like, I'm gonna play college football, you know.
So that was when you realized, like, you had the toolbox, and
Yeah.
you were gonna be able to do it.
Yeah. Because up until that point, I'm I'm going up against a bunch of kids and I'm just burying them at the level of football that I played
Yeah.
in Missouri. Is not super high level football, but my
Big
tape's always
fish, small pond.
yeah, my tape's gonna look great. My tape's gonna look good. But you put me up against some O linemen that are getting recruited from all over the place, and I use the technique that the coaches are teaching me, and I put people on their backs and I run around them and create buzz for myself. And that camp and me playing the crosstown kid and I put this nicely, kick his butt. Um, that was a big reason why I ended up at Illinois.
22 years later, you still have the rivalry. You think he knows that?
I think he doesn't care. He didn't last very long.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I think that's enough content. I stole enough of your time. It was great chatting. If you like our content, be sure to subscribe to our channel, leave us a comment below. Also, be sure to check us out on your favorite podcast provider